3-0. Now, we all know Stephanie White has come out and said she's stubborn. She likes things her way, yada, yada, yada. Well, damn that. You need to put that to the side because
Stephanie White is actively working against the best thing that has ever happened to the Indiana Fever franchise. That is not a hot take. That is not an exaggeration. That is the cold, undeniable mathematical reality of what is unfolding in Indiana right now. And the people who run this team are either too stubborn, too blind, or too proud to admit it. Caitlin Clark is the reason this franchise has a pulse. Caitlin Clark is the reason people are tuning in, showing up, and caring. And the head coach, the woman who is supposed to be maximizing the most generational talent this league has seen in decades, has openly admitted she is resistant to the style of play that is actually winning games. Welcome back, this is Rimrun, and today we are ripping the doors off the Stephanie White problem. Because this situation has reached a breaking point, and somebody has to say it out loud.
I turn this into the Kelsey Mitchell show. Caitlin Clark has earned the right to play her style.
Here is what makes this so absolutely maddening. This is not a complicated basketball situation. This is not a nuanced tactical debate where reasonable people can disagree. The evidence is sitting right in front of us, undeniable and unavoidable. Caitlin Clark was handed a roster that was poorly constructed, and that falls directly on GM Amber Cox, who assembled a supporting cast that has been fighting for its life in games it should be winning comfortably. 3 games in a row, this team was bailed out, not carried to a comfortable victory. Bailed out, tooth and nail, life and death by one player against bottom-of-the-barrel competition. And yet, even with all of that context, even with a shaky roster, a thin bench, and Raven Johnson potentially out with an ankle injury, the moment Caitlin Clark took over the reins and started playing her game, the read and react game, the Clark ball that the entire basketball world came here to watch, this team went 3-0. 3-0, not 500. Not scratching and clawing for wins, winning, and now on the eve of a battle against a Toronto Tempo squad that is sitting at 500 and playing genuinely good basketball. The most dangerous thing standing between the Indiana Fever and a victory is not Brittany Sykes. It is not Marina Mabrey. It is the head coach on their own sideline. Let me be entirely clear with you about what is at stake in this game. Sandy Brondello, the Toronto head coach, is a legitimate basketball mind. She is a coach who understands talent, who builds systems around her best players, and who by every honest assessment would have been a far better steward of Caitlin Clark's development than what Indiana has in that head coaching seat right now. The contrast between those two coaches on that sideline tonight is going to be glaring. Absolutely glaring. And if Stephanie White walks into this game with her old instincts, her old stubbornness, her old insistence on running a system that had this team sitting at 500 while the rest of the league was taking notice, then Indiana is going to lose a game it had no business losing.
Caitlin Clark's way. Stop worrying about content creators. We're not the problem. Get your staff together. Get your game plan together. Because Sandy Brondello 100% is the better coach.
Let's document exactly what has happened here, because I want every single person watching this video to understand the full picture before we go any further. Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana and did what she was supposed to do. She was patient, she was professional, she gave the head coach the benefit of the doubt. By the accounting of people who have been watching this team closely, she gave Stephanie White approximately 10 games to run her system. 10 games of the Stephanie White style, the slow, grinding, possession-by-possession basketball that nobody in the arena, nobody watching at home, and nobody paying attention to this league actually wanted to see. 10 games of that, and the result, 500 basketball, a team treading water, a generational talent being asked to fit into a box that was built for a different era of the game. And then something shifted. Caitlin Clark stopped waiting. She took over. She started playing Clark ball, the read and react offense, the pick and roll with Aaliyah Boston that produced what the transcript of this league's history will record as the first duo to put up back-to-back 30-point double-doubles in WNBA history. Let that sit with you for a second. The first duo in WNBA history to do that. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, operating in a system built around Clark's instincts and Clark's vision, not around Stephanie White's comfort zone. The result of that shift, 3 wins, 3-0. Not a coincidence, not a fluke, a direct, traceable, undeniable consequence of letting Caitlin Clark play Caitlin Clark's game. And now we are sitting here, on game day against Toronto, genuinely uncertain about whether Stephanie White is going to walk back into her old habits. That uncertainty alone is a catastrophic indictment of this coaching situation. You should never, not for one single second, be sitting here wondering whether your own head coach is going to sabotage your best player's rhythm. That conversation should not exist. And yet here we are. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what the source material on this situation actually confirms about Stephanie White's own stated philosophy.
3-0. Now, we all know Stephanie White has come out and said she's stubborn, she likes things her way, yada, yada, yada. Well, damn that, you need to put that to the side because
she has said it. Stephanie White has publicly admitted she is stubborn. She likes things her way. Those are not words I am putting in her mouth. That is the characterization of her own posture, confirmed and on record. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because what that admission means in the context of a 3-0 run powered entirely by abandoning her system is absolutely damning. Stubborn, likes things her way, while Caitlin Clark is out there making history, while the wins are piling up the moment her approach gets pushed aside. That is the head coach of the Indiana Fever, ladies and gentlemen. That is who is standing between this franchise and something genuinely special.
I turn this into the Kelsey Mitchell show. Caitlin Clark has earned the right to play her style.
Now let's get into the tactical reality of this game, because the stakes could not be higher and the margin for error could not be thinner. The single most important thing Indiana needs to do tonight is keep the basketball in Caitlin Clark's hands and run the read and react offense. This is not complicated. This is not a secret. The pick and roll between Clark and Aaliyah Boston has been the most devastating weapon in this league when it is deployed correctly. When that action is flowing, when Clark has the ball in her hands and is making decisions in real time, this team is virtually unguardable. The defense has to account for Clark's shooting range, which opens driving lanes for Boston, which creates kick-out opportunities for shooters on the perimeter. It is a cascading, beautiful, ruthless offensive system, but only when Clark is the engine. The moment Stephanie White decides to run it through Kelsey Mitchell instead, the moment she turns this into the Kelsey Mitchell show, the entire offensive machine grinds to a halt. And I want to be precise about this, because Kelsey Mitchell is not the enemy here. Kelsey Mitchell is a real basketball player. She can score. But she is the third option on this team. The third option, not the second, not the co-star. The third option. And if she is operating within 3 dribbles or fewer and accepting her role in the system, she is a genuinely valuable piece of this puzzle. The problem is not Kelsey Mitchell. The problem is a head coach who has historically shown a troubling tendency to run the offense through the wrong person at the wrong time. And here is the thing that makes this so absolutely infuriating. Stephanie White has shown she is capable of running plays for Clark. Against Connecticut, she drew up a handful of actions that got Clark open looks from 3, and Clark knocked them down. Imagine that. When you design the offense to create opportunities for your best player produces. Revolutionary concept, groundbreaking stuff. But instead of building on that, instead of saying we have found the formula, let's commit to it completely, there is a genuine documented fear that old habits are going to creep back in tonight. The second critical factor in this game is finishing at the rim, and I need to be blunt about this because the performance against Connecticut was, in certain moments, genuinely embarrassing. Lexi Hall was missing layups, Kelsey Mitchell was missing layups, Aaliyah Boston missed approximately 5 or 6 layups in a row at one point, 5 or 6, in a professional basketball game, against a team Indiana was supposed to handle. Monique Billings, missing layups. This is a team of professional athletes being paid to play basketball at the highest level of the women's game, and they were turning the paint into a graveyard for easy buckets. If Indiana can simply make the shots they are supposed to make, the shots that require no degree of difficulty, the shots that practice has prepared them for thousands of times, then this game becomes manageable. If they cannot, then no amount of Clark brilliance is going to be enough to overcome the self-inflicted damage.
Caitlin Clark's way, stop worrying about content creators. We're not the problem. Get your staff together. Get your game plan together. Because Sandy Brondillo 100% is the better coach.
The third piece of this puzzle is the defensive assignment on Brittany Sykes and Marina Mabrey. And this is where Indiana's most catastrophic structural flaw becomes a genuine game-deciding liability. This team fouls too much. Way too much. They are, by the accounting of people who have been tracking this, the worst team in the league when it comes to foul discipline. And Brittany Sykes, who is averaging 20 points and doing it with a relentlessness that demands respect, is precisely the type of player who exploits that weakness. She puts her head down, she attacks the rim, she draws contact, and she gets to the free throw line. That is her game. That is how she scores. And if Indiana's defenders are gambling on steals, reaching in, playing out of position, Sykes is going to stand at that line and dismantle this team one free throw at a time. The assignment is clear: stay in front, hands up, rotate, help, close out with discipline. Do not give Sykes a runway to the paint. And when Mabrey gets rolling, because Mabrey is a streaky, terrifying shooter in the mold of a player who is either completely cold or absolutely on fire, you have to find a way to keep her uncomfortable without giving her a free path to the line either. The entire backcourt of Toronto is built to exploit exactly the kind of undisciplined, foul-heavy defense that Indiana has been playing. That has to change tonight, or this game is going to get ugly in a hurry. And then there is the bench situation, which is the fourth critical variable in this game and perhaps the most unpredictable. The Indiana Fever bench is not a strength. It has never been a strength. It is a collection of players who are capable of individual moments but have not yet demonstrated the kind of consistent, reliable production that a playoff-caliber team requires. Raven Johnson may be out with an ankle injury, which removes one of the more energetic options from the rotation. And the names left, Sophie Cunningham, Michaela Timpson, Maisha Hines-Allen, are players who have shown flashes, but who cannot be counted on for sustained contribution. Sophie Cunningham closed the last game with 11 straight points. 11 straight. That was a genuine, clutch, soul-saving performance that kept Indiana alive in a game that was slipping away. Can she do it again? Maybe. But banking on a bench player to deliver a heroic sequence in back-to-back games is not a strategy. It is a prayer. Maisha Hines-Allen stepped up a couple of games ago and gave Indiana something real. Is she going to be there tonight? Michaela Timpson, is she going to be a factor? These are questions that should not be open questions at this stage of the season, and the fact that they are is a direct reflection of how poorly this roster was constructed by GM Amber Cox. Don't take my word for it on the coaching situation reaching a critical threshold. Here is what the evidence sounds like when it is spoken plainly and directly. There it is, the fear that is sitting at the center of this entire conversation, that Stephanie White turns this into the Kelsey Mitchell show instead of the Caitlin Clark show. That is not a hypothetical. That is a documented pattern. That is the thing that happened for the first 10 games of this season, while this team sat at 500 and the basketball world watched a generational talent being asked to play second fiddle in her own franchise. Caitlin Clark has earned the right to play her style. She earned it, with her performance, with her results, with the 3-0 record that materialized the moment her approach was allowed to breathe. And now the question is whether the head coach is going to honor that or undermine it. Let me now render the verdict on where this franchise stands, where this coaching situation is headed, and what the outcome of tonight's game means for the bigger picture. First, Stephanie White's job security. I want to be direct about this. A head coach who is openly characterized as stubborn, who resists adapting her system to accommodate the most talented player in the league, is a head coach who is on borrowed time. The moment the results stop, the moment the 3-0 run stalls because of a reversion to the old system, the conversation about Stephanie White's future in Indiana is going to become unavoidable. The front office, the same front office that gave us this poorly constructed roster, is going to have to look at the numbers and ask themselves whether this coaching arrangement is sustainable. And the answer, based on everything we have seen, is that it is not. Not if the stubbornness persists. Not if Clark Ball keeps getting shelved in favor of a system that produced 500 basketball. Second, Sandy Brondello on that opposing sideline tonight is a walking, breathing reminder of what this franchise does not have. Brondello is a coach who builds around talent. She is a coach who would look at Caitlin Clark and say, "You are the system. Everything else is designed to serve you." The contrast between what Brondello has built in Toronto and what Stephanie White has constructed in Indiana is going to be visible tonight, and it is going to be uncomfortable for anyone who has been paying attention. If Brondello outcoaches White tonight, and the possibility is absolutely real, then that conversation about the coaching seat in Indiana is going to get louder, faster, and more urgent than anyone in that front office is prepared for. Third, Caitlin Clark's trajectory is not dependent on Stephanie White's cooperation, but it is being slowed by it. That is the brutal, unavoidable truth. Clark is going to be great regardless. She is going to produce regardless. She is going to make history regardless. But the question is whether she is going to do it in spite of her coaching staff or because of it. Right now, the evidence suggests it is happening in spite of it. And that is a catastrophic waste of a once-in-a-generation opportunity for this franchise. Fourth, The Toronto Tempo is not a team Indiana can sleepwalk past. They are a 500 team playing good basketball. Brittany Sykes is averaging 20 points. Mabry can go off for 35 or 40 on any given night when she is hot. The bench depth comparison between these two teams is not flattering for Indiana. If the Fever walk into this game without their best game plan, if Stephanie White reverts to her old habits, if the foul discipline collapses, if the layups keep getting missed, if Clark is taken off the ball in favor of a system that does not work, Indiana loses this game, and they lose it in a way that is going to sting, because it will have been entirely preventable. And here is the most damning thing I can say about this entire situation. The thing that nobody on television is going to say out loud, because television has to maintain relationships with coaches and franchises and front offices. The conversation about Stephanie White's coaching choices is not a conversation about basketball philosophy. It is a conversation about ego. It is a conversation about a head coach who has publicly admitted she is stubborn, who likes things her way, who spent 10 games running a system that produced mediocre results, and who is now being asked to set her ego aside and let the best player on the floor be the best player on the floor. That should not be a difficult ask. That should be the baseline expectation. And the fact that it is even a question, the fact that we are sitting here on game day genuinely uncertain about whether Stephanie White is going to get out of Caitlin Clark's way, tells you everything you need to know about the dysfunction that is baked into this franchise right now. Here is the clip that the establishment does not want you to sit with, because of what it says about the coaching situation in plain, unambiguous language. Stay out of Caitlin Clark's way. Stop worrying about content creators. Get your staff together. Get your game plan together. That is the message. That is the verdict. That is the thing that is sitting at the center of this entire conversation, and it is being said because the evidence demands it. Stephanie White has spent energy, actual, real, finite coaching energy, being distracted by external noise instead of focusing on the singular most important task in front of her, building a system that makes Caitlin Clark unstoppable. That is the job. That is the only job that matters right now. And if she cannot do it, if the stubbornness, the ego, the insistence on doing things her way continues to override the evidence that Clark ball is working, then this franchise is going to waste one of the most extraordinary basketball talents this league has ever produced. Caitlin Clark is out there right now, in the present tense, doing the thing, making the pass, hitting the three, running the pick and roll with Aaliyah Boston and producing history. She is not waiting for permission. She is not asking for validation. She is playing the game at a level that is rewriting what is possible in this league, and she is doing it while carrying a poorly constructed roster on her back, while navigating a coaching situation that has spent the better part of this season working against her instead of for her. That is who Caitlin Clark is. That is what she does. And the only question that remains, the only question that actually matters going into this game and every game after it, is whether Stephanie White is finally, truly, irreversibly going to get out of her way and let her do it. Here is the forced choice I am leaving you with today, and I want you to drop your answer in the comments right now. Does Stephanie White make it to the end of this season as Indiana's head coach? Or does the Clark Ball era force a change in the coaching seat before the playoffs? That is the question. Not whether Clark is great, we know she is great. The question is whether this franchise is going to let greatness breathe, or whether it is going to keep suffocating it with a system built for a different era and a different team. Drop your answer below. Tell me what you saw in this game. Tell me whether Stephanie White got out of the way or ran it back to the Kelsey Mitchell show. The conversation is happening right here, right now, and your voice is part of it. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button. Subscribe if you are not already here. We are doing this every game day, every controversy, every moment that the establishment tries to bury. Hit the bell so you do not miss a single one. This is Rim Run. We will see you on the next one.